week on The Watchman, welcome to Herodium. This is the site of the ancient palace, the ancient fortress of its namesake, Herod the Great, madman, tyrant, and master builder. Just look at how this magnificent structure still looms large over this land. Our good friend Danny the Digger Herman is with us to explain why Herod built this structure, how he built it, and how this mad king's presence still is felt throughout Israel today, and how he could not snuff out a new king who was to rise after him. His name was Jesus. Join us today for the inside story of Herodium, only right here on The Watchman. Danny the Digger, it is great to have you with us for another incredible Watchman production.
Always a pleasure, Eric.
Always a pleasure to have you, and what a place. You always take us to the most interesting, the most fascinating places here in the land of Israel and beyond, Herodium.
Yes, this is a site that I personally have a very strong connection to it. I personally participated in some of the excavations here, and this is really one of the most fantastic sites in the Holy Land.
Yeah, and that's saying something. You've been wanting to bring us here for a while, Danny. Yes. Now, we're finally here. We're going to get into it. Herod the Great, his reign, his status as a mad kind of genius master builder, I guess you would say, and how it affects Christianity, the time of Jesus. But first, give us a survey of the land. Where are we right now?
Okay, we are on the edge of the Judean desert. It descends from here all the way down to the Dead Sea, which on a better day can actually be seen from here.
Okay.
But Jerusalem is just behind us. 10 miles away, you can see Mount Gilo there in the distance.
Okay.
Okay, and actually even closer to us is Bethlehem. We're in the West Bank. And Bethlehem, for the last 15 years under full Palestinian control, is just around the corner. And this site is a place where Herod, in his earlier years, had a pivotal moment of conflict against the Maccabees. He nearly lost, but he survived. And later, as king, he decided to make a monument for that moment, for that achievement. And he humbly named it after himself.
Herodium.
Herodium. And it was meant to be his palace and his burial place.
About 10 miles, maybe just under 10 miles from Jerusalem, I guess we are right now, Danny?
You can actually see the towers of Mount Scopus and Mount of Olives.
Okay.
The old city itself is not visible because of the Armona Netziv Ridge, but it's like the Dome of the Rock is just around the corner, as well as the Holy Sepulchre. They're all there. Kibbutz Ramat Rachel is facing us at the southern end of Jerusalem, and that way is towards Hebron.
So very strategically located, Danny, at a crossroads of Jerusalem, Bethlehem, and Hebron.
Yeah, the main road is actually there, but if you're heading to Masada, if you're heading to the Nabatean kingdom, to Petra, this is the way.
Gotcha. And I have to mention, and folks can probably recognize, we are very high up right now. Yeah. Tell us about this structure, this Herodian fortress. This is man-made, as hard as it is to believe. This is actually man-made, how we're up here on this slope, right?
Yeah, there was a natural hill here. There were actually two of them, but Herod cut one of them to make the other one much higher. All man-made, all built. Tons of earth were piled up, and a circular wall created the frame of the Acropolis, where inside he planted a palace complex. You have a bathhouse, you have a reception hall, you have the bedrooms, and beneath a giant set of water reservoirs to last a long siege if needed.
And there's a lower city, which we'll take a look at a bit later in the show. There's the spot that may be Herod's tomb, actually, right here. And a fascinating backstory, as you mentioned at the top, Danny, why this was built and kind of the power struggle that Herod prevailed for control of the land of Israel. We're on the outskirts of the Judean desert here. And real quick, before we go inside this palace complex, Talk about Herod's status as the great builder of Israel during those ancient times. This is just one of those great structures that he built.
Of course, Herod is called by historians Herod the Great. Archaeologists would title him Herod the Great Builder. The guy just loved to build. He takes a sand dune between Tel Aviv and Haifa of today and turns it into an international scale city port.
Caesarea. Yeah.
Okay? That way, towards the Nabatean kingdom, he takes a hilltop above the Dead Sea and transforms it into this ultimate desert palace fortress, Masada. Okay? And Herodium is one of his 5 or 6 desert fortresses which are just for his private use. But Caesarea, transforming Jerusalem, building in
Second temple in Jerusalem, Herod's temple.
It's all Herod's work.
How about Jordan, where you and I, Danny, spent time at Mukawer or Macherus, the spot where John the Baptist was beheaded and imprisoned?
Herod was obsessed with construction. He just loved to build, apparently.
And kind of a paranoid guy, as you and I have discussed, because all these structures are so well fortified, they're high up, so outsiders can't come in. But we are going to go in right now inside this palace complex, right?
Yeah, I made the arrangements. Usually only people really connected to the king can enter, but I arranged the keys.
Danny the Digger knows the right people. Lead the way, my friend. Let's go.
Eric, you need to understand, Herod is such a pivotal figure in the history of this land. We actually call his time frame the Herodian period. Okay, the guy was so influential on the history of the early Roman times.
This is right before the time of Jesus, essentially.
Yes, and also on a global scale, Herod is so famous because of being mentioned in the first parts of the Gospels as the butcher, the guy who slaughters innocent babies in Bethlehem.
Yeah, he was looking for Jesus. He was looking for this newborn Messiah. He even tried to use the 3 wise men for them to lead him to him.
Totally. And as archaeologists, I would say Herod is the great builder. Look at this. This is the interior of the palace in the citadel of the site he humbly named after himself, Herodium.
And pretty well preserved.
Yes.
I mean, these ruins.
Yes, it was all covered up in the Middle Ages, and this debris protected it. In fact, here is where the bathhouse used to be. These pillars...
Sauna here.
Totally. Okay, this part didn't last very well, but the tepidarium, the service room, the massage room, is fully intact. You got to see this.
So now let's take a look.
This is a complete domed structure. Okay, this is not reconstructed. This is 2,000-year-old and original, filled up with debris and re-exposed by the Franciscans in the 1960s.
And built by Herod the Great.
And built by Herod the Great.
And one of the only kind like it in Israel, right?
Yeah.
This dome.
Yes, on a Roman global scale, it's one of the very few examples where the whole thing is intact. And also the walls were plastered and painted. There's still a bit of it left. If you remember in Masada, we saw better examples of these big chunks of color on the walls, making it all so Herodian. And this is where the king may have had a massage after sweating in the sauna and before cooling in the frigidarium.
Yeah.
This is maybe where he plotted, his next political moves or
his next political murder.
Exactly. Even of his own family members, okay? His opposition would be wiped out even if it included family members.
Killed his own wife, killed 2 of his own sons.
Indeed.
Wow.
And Augustus made a very famous comment when he heard that in Rome. He said it's better to be Herod's pig than Herod's son, meaning you have a better chance of living.
This was the New Testament version of Game of Thrones.
Totally.
Under Herod the Great, wiping out all opposition, lots of political intrigue.
Totally. Okay, and the rest of the palace in front of us is the courtyard, the reception hall, the bedrooms. I mean, it's all so very well preserved.
I was just going to say, it's amazingly well preserved, Danny, and we can really kind of walk in the footsteps of that time over 2,000 years ago with Herod the Great. Totally. The mastermind, the tyrant, the mad builder, Herod the Great. Totally. Can we take a look at more of this amazing structure? Let's do it.
Let me show you this. You see, the site has a lot more than this nice bathhouse. It's got remains of towers, of this nice garden, but it was also used in later periods. Look here, for instance, you can see a cross chisel into the entry of the bathhouse.
Amazing.
Okay, in Byzantine times, they also used this.
About 1,600 years ago.
Yeah, and in the garden area, this nice open courtyard, which probably had nice gardening, you can see beautiful Corinthian capital.
Very well preserved, these pillars.
Indeed. And a giant watchtower on the eastern side, facing the desert, which was used probably for guarding and maybe also for marking the site.
And for the paranoid Herod, he needed to see anyone who was approaching, to see his enemies coming.
From a long distance.
Here on the edge of the Judean desert.
And when he was not in fear, he was enjoying the bedrooms and the triclinium, the reception hall over here. Let me show you this.
Over the past 2 years, 30 nations have been represented at the annual Christians United for Israel Summit in Washington, D.C. Israel supporters from across the globe joined CUFI in standing in solidarity with the state of Israel and the Jewish people. They celebrated and rejoiced at the night to honor Israel. And some have requested that their countries follow America's lead and move their embassies to Jerusalem, the eternal, undivided capital of Israel. Now, with over 7 million active members, CUFI is the largest, most ethnically diverse pro-Israel organization in the U.S. As we, along with CUFI UK and CUFI Canada, expand our reach into other regions, including Brazil, we are excited about the future of this movement for such a time as this. For Zion's sake, we will not be silent. From all over the world, from every nation, we are CUFI.
Eric, this is part of Herod's palace, but what's so important in this place from a Jewish point of view is far more significant. Okay, we have evidence here of the triclinium, of this place being like a reception hall, but some 70 years later, as it turns out, benches were added around the walls here, enabling a large number of people to convene, to sit together. In Greek, it's called to synagogi. Reminds you of a word in English?
Synagogue.
Synagogue. This is a very, very ancient synagogue. It's one of the first recorded by archaeology. It is contemporary to the synagogue found in Masada.
Yeah, I was going to say, Danny, this reminds me very much of that very synagogue that you and I stood in not too long ago.
And it's a very similar story. In both sites, rebels take shelter, and while reusing the Herodian fortresses, water reservoirs, and so on, they fix it and match it for their uses. Ritual baths and a synagogue.
Wow, so these were the rebels, Danny, the first great Jewish revolt, the year AD 66 to around the year AD 70. Jews came up here, took shelter from the Romans, and talk about the high ground.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And unlike Masada, when they're sitting here, they can maybe even see the smoke of burning Jerusalem. And they're probably sitting here thinking, oh my God, literally my God, what are we going to do? Our temple is gone. Maybe this is the place where they started debating and figuring out that prayers must be created to replace the animal sacrifice because the temple is gone.
Pretty amazing, Danny, that this is one of the oldest synagogues we know of that we're standing in right now, number one. But number two, amazing in a more unfortunate way that the Romans eventually were able to make their way up here.
Yes. The Romans didn't stay in Jerusalem. They kept going to crush all resistance. The rebels here knew that they were coming. So we found here an oven for smelting metal to make weapons. And the underground water reservoirs were changed into like bunkers with hideouts and channels connecting them. And eventually the site would be taken by the Romans as well. Some 60 years later, the Jews are hoping that the Romans might change their attitude when Hadrian is in power. But as it turns out, he has no intention to let the Jews rebuild the temple. And that's when the Jews rebel again. This time there's a command, there's a commander, a general. His name is Bar Kokhba, or as we know from his letters, Bar Kosiba. We actually found original letters written by him in caves not far from Masada. And the rebels use this place again. In fact, it may have been a command post where they again created weapons, where they minted coins also, Bar Kokhba coins, which are sometimes found in archaeological digs, sometimes in the antiquities market. They were maybe even produced here.
Right here. And you can see, once again, Danny, why they would choose this spot. As Herod designed it, it's high ground. You're looking down upon Jerusalem, Bethlehem, Hebron. It appears impenetrable from the outside, but the Romans made their way back up here again with the Bar Kokhba rebels, just like the first time.
Yes. Again, the Jewish resistance was crushed. And frankly, the next time that in this land the Jews will fight for freedom and this time succeed will be only in 1948.
Amen.
Okay? You're standing in the place where the Jews were defeated twice, but 2,000 years later they will get their act together, and this time they will succeed. They will create the state of Israel.
Back in their ancestral and ancient homeland, Danny, never to be uprooted again. Okay, you mentioned those reservoirs.
Yeah.
Now, we can actually go underground and get a first-hand look at that, right?
Yeah, some of it is accessible. Let me show you.
Let's go.
From terrorists who would annihilate her with bombs and bullets, to so-called activists that would eliminate her with boycotts and sanctions, Israel's enemies are on the march. In Why Israel, you will learn how to be an active defender of the Jewish state, knowledgeable and powerful as you stand up for truth. You'll receive the biblical evidence proving Israel's special place in God's plan. Learn how his steadfast commitment to his people is a matter of fact, not opinion. From its miraculous rebirth as a modern state to the dangerous threats it presently faces, Israel's inspiring journey is laid out in this short booklet. Supporting Israel is a biblical mandate for all Christians. In Why Israel, you will discover why you should care about the Jewish state and what you can do to stand with God's chosen people.
Erick, just think of the effort, of the stress that these rebels were going through to dig those tunnels. These are all man-made.
Incredible, Danny. Beneath Herodium, and this is like an ancient underground cave complex. It's massive down here.
Yes, they had the water reservoirs of Herod's at use, and out of them they dug channels that could enable them to link between those water reservoirs. Look over here. Look at the space we're entering. The Herodian water reservoir ends right here, and then this tunnel penetrates through it to link up to the Acropolis, up to the Herodian palace complex. Which also means, by the way, this is original plaster, which means that this level may have been level where water was maintained for quite some time.
You can see it.
You can see it through
The
this.
line is still there.
It's amazing.
2,000 years later.
Yeah.
Once again, Danny, an amazingly well-preserved site right down to these underground cave complexes.
Totally. And it's 1 out of 4. There are 4 water reservoirs, 3 of them on the side of the mountain, a 4th right under Herod's palace, all a very clever plot of Herod to ensure that they'll have plenty of water in case of a siege.
Once again, Herod the great builder, and once again, Herod the paranoid.
Yes, extravagance and paranoia. You see it wherever you follow Herodian sites.
Now, these caves in particular, Danny, were used during the Bar Kokhba revolt, the year 132 AD, 135 AD. Wow, some guerrilla warfare by those Jewish rebels striking at the Romans and retreating back into these caves.
Yes, and I don't want to think of the stress and how they felt. You know, they're trapped in here. They are trying to harm the Romans as much as they can, but they're outnumbered by them. Okay, and they're hoping, you know, for things to improve, but at the end, both rebellions ended with a disaster. The people that made these tunnels, that fought for their freedom, failed.
Those hit-and-run tactics and the mighty Roman army, I'm sure, came in here and cleared these tunnels out. Some probably vicious hand-to-hand deadly fighting right in these very caves and tunnels where we're standing right now.
We found arrowheads, we found coins, we found cooking bowls, like in Masada, you know, civilian population that is trying to cling to its freedom, but it is defeated.
Yeah, a lot of parallels to Masada, Danny, as you said, another great Herodian structure that he built. One last thing we want to mention while we are down here, again with the New Testament link to the time of Jesus, Pontius Pilate. Tell us about his possible link to these very caves where we're standing right now.
That was published just recently, but among the many small artifacts that were found here was a ring that only recently, 40, 50 years later, was properly cleaned up, and it proved to portray a jar in the middle, and on both sides of it, it read Pilatoi, which means of Pilatus, Pontius Pilate. Wow. Now, I cannot prove that it was his personal ring, and he may have had several rings. Usually high official clerks had several rings to be used for different needs, but you cannot rule out the possibility that a private ring of Pilatus was found in those caves as well. The first time ever.
Wow, the first time ever.
Yes.
Right here in these
And it's the
caves.
only second inscription ever to mention him by name. The only other time that Pilatus is mentioned by name in an inscription was found in the 60s in Caesarea. It's at the Israel Museum today.
Another Herodian-built spot, Caesarea. It never ends. The great builder, his imprint on this land 2,000 years later is still felt, Danny. This proves once again the truth of the Bible, the truth that the Jewish people were here thousands of years ago in their ancient and ancestral homeland. But this isn't the end of Herodium, by the way. We've been in the upper city. We've been in this cave complex. There's also a lower city, if you can believe it.
Yes, something that wasn't privately used by Herod, but by his staff. A whole complex of a swimming pool with a nice island in the middle, another bigger bathhouse complex. Let me show you.
And we might even get a look at Herod's tomb a bit later.
Yes, it all relates to it. Herod's tomb is also within all of this.
Danny, what a sight. Let's go. Let's see some more.
America is at its best when it supports Israel. It is a value deeply ingrained in our national DNA, and it is one that I believe has brought us blessing and bounty from the Lord.
But there's a bond that we're tied to Israel and the Jewish people. They are the beacon of hope and democracy in what is a very bad neighborhood.
I would argue that if the Middle East had more free enterprise, pro-American democracies, if there were more countries like that in the Middle East, the world would be a lot safer than it is right now.
Israel's commitment lights the way for the rest of the Middle East, and indeed for the entire world.
And the why begins with the fact that Israel is the only pro-American, free enterprise democracy in the Middle East. That in and of itself is a reason to support them strongly.
The protector of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps, nor should we.
Well, Danny, as if the upper city, the upper level of Herodium weren't majestic enough, we also have a lower city here. What do we have here?
Well, right behind us is a full complex of a bathhouse. This dome structure was the sweat room. As if it's not hot enough here today, you can actually go in here 2,000 years ago you could and sweat.
It's an ancient sauna.
It's an ancient sauna. Next to it you have some cold water pools to relieve yourself. And there's a big outdoor swimming pool here in the back with a little artificial island in the middle. Wow. Okay, and all of this had a colonnaded pedestrian pathway around it. This was really nice and royal, almost as nice as the upper city.
Yeah, this is beautiful. I mean, again, Danny, very well preserved remains. Look at this dome, look at these pillars. And again, Herod with the flair for the dramatic, the great builder with the swimming pool here, with the artificial tower in the middle of it.
You definitely see the extravagance here. Yeah. But this was uncovered not in order to find another bathhouse. We have enough bathhouses from Roman times. This was exposed in the 1970s and 80s for one reason: trying to find the tomb of Herod. We know from Josephus that Herod was buried at the site of Herodium. He just doesn't say exactly where. So both the Franciscans were looking for his tomb on the Acropolis. Professor Netzer, my teacher of the Hebrew University, spent 40 years of his life.
40?
40, yes, from the 70s and until, the early 21st century, thinking the tomb might be here. If it ain't there and if it ain't here, where else can it be? And it wasn't found in both places. Eventually, in 2007, a royal tomb was found on the corner of the Acropolis, halfway in between. This was a big sensation at the time of the discovery. I personally joined in and exposed one of the corners of that tomb. Wow. A special exhibition at the Israel Museum followed. This was a big sensation at the time, but not everyone is certain that this is actually Herod's tomb. This was found completely looted and trashed to pieces, and compared to Herod's scale, it's actually humble. Okay, so maybe it is his tomb after all, and he developed a humble character in his last year, which I don't believe. Or maybe it's still hiding somewhere.
Maybe he's still hiding someplace among these rocks and ruins where we're standing. The mystery may remain.
Totally. So Herodium is still waiting for more research that may reveal amazing more secrets in the site. By the way, I'm really honored to come on your show again and again. People now reach me because of the show, asking me to show them around.
Oh, Danny, this is great. It is an honor and a pleasure to have you with us here as a Watchman contributor, a frequent guest and guide on this show. And if folks, he's the best there is, Danny the Digger, and we are privileged here on the Watchman Show to have him with us on a regular basis. Danny, it was great having you with us today here at Herodium, a place that's near and dear to your heart where you've done a lot of great work.
Totally.
And who knows, maybe we'll, thank you, my friend, maybe we will be back here to discover some new mysteries at this amazing site. Danny the Digger Herman. Toda Rabbah, my friend.
Bevakasha.
Yes, and folks, when I think of King Herod and his legacy, I think of 2 Chronicles, which says, the eyes of the Lord scan to and fro throughout the entire world, looking for those whose hearts are committed to him. Well, that wasn't King Herod. His heart was not committed to the Lord, but a king came after Herod, who Herod tried to snuff out literally in the womb, whose heart was committed to the Lord. His name was Jesus. So it was interesting to have this fascinating take through the time of Jesus today and beyond here at Herodium. We're bringing you these stories every week here on The Watchman that you just won't see anywhere else. So thanks for joining us on yet another adventure here in the land of Israel at Herodium. Until next time, God bless you. And remember, never hold your peace.